This video is sponsored by Case Filters, Capture with Confidence. Click on the link in the description below and use the code Alister for a 5% discount. Hello everyone, I'm Alister Benn and you're watching Expressive Photography. In this week's video I want to talk about something that's really close to my heart, and that is the subject of mental health and how that relates to my creativity. Or more importantly, how my creativity relates to my mental health. Now, as many of you know, this is something I have covered from time to time in the past on the YouTube channel here, and in fact I even wrote a book on it. Out of Darkness is primarily about how my creativity helped me to overcome 30 years of panic attacks, anxiety and depression. And the person who's sat in front of you now is very different from that guy maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Now, as some of you may also know, we have just moved out to the Isle of Lewis and are living out here on the island now full time, surrounded by ocean and cliffs and beaches. But the reason I'm not sharing a video from this beautiful landscape with you this week is primarily a couple of things. We've been incredibly busy with the move and settling down and getting settled here in the new house. And secondly, the sun is rising at about 4:25 in the morning and not setting again until nearly 10:30 at night. As someone who goes to bed typically about 9 o'clock, that is not good for sunsets. However, just a little spoiler, 2 weeks from now, I'll be sharing a video with you where we are going out for the entire night. We're going to go and shoot a sunset all the way through the night to the sunrise and then crash out. So that'll be 2 videos over 2 weeks. So I look forward to that. Now, back to the topic at hand. I want to take you back to November of last year. I have been suffering from sciatica since the summer, and by the time November came round, I was almost at a point where I couldn't walk. I was running a workshop, and thankfully the participants were incredibly understanding and realised that my mobility was somewhat limited, so we didn't maybe do quite as much hiking as normal. But what we did do is we surrounded ourselves with incredible atmospheric landscapes, and a lot of the photographs in this folder were taken right beside the road, so the clients could wander off and explore and I could potter around nearer the van. And what I have here is what I like to call a diary of engagement. Now, I know deep in myself that time I was definitely worried about my capacity to carry on working, my mobility, the pain I was suffering. I had started to drink maybe a bit too much to kind of compensate for some of these things, and I was on a lot of painkillers. And superficially, I think I was experiencing all the trappings of, or all the potential pitfalls of entering into quite a depressed state. But I actually kept myself really positive and I actually felt quite okay about the whole thing. So I think this is an important part of learning our own mental bandwidth and how we react to these things. But I definitely felt that the images I was making at the time were either somehow an external representation of that more anxious, melancholic, depressed side inside of me. So maybe, something like this, which is pretty oppressive. Now, most of these are raw files. I actually haven't worked any of these photographs yet, just through lack of time. So this is almost the first time I'm looking at these photographs. You'll see that some of them are JPEGs. With the GFX 100S, I was photographing JPEG and RAW simultaneously. So most of these are actually going to be JPEGs. But I will work a RAW later on. So this is what I was taking on the back of the camera. And I think seeing something on the back of the camera that's somehow an articulate representation of how you feel can actually be a really good way to channel your creativity through the types of photographs you're making. So if I'm feeling dark and depressed and melancholic and kind of compressed and worried and a bit anxious, I can make a photograph that's an expression of that, and this photograph here certainly is. Or we can go the flip side and produce something like this, which is golden color, lighter, more airy, more atmospheric with the background. And this is where we can either make images of how we feel, or we can use the images that we make to change how we feel. You can't look at something that's warm colored and atmospheric without feeling some sense of relaxation, joy, happiness, etc. And you only have to come in and do something like negative dehaze. So you make it more atmospheric, and all of a sudden the image is just less oppressive. You know, make it warmer, make it more saturated. And all of those things, those three simple techniques there, allowed me to make an image that's even more atmospheric. So when it comes to our creativity, I think it's very important for us to realize that we are not who we think we are. We're not this thinking process of, I'm suffering, I'm in pain, I'm worried about the future, I'm worried about X, Y, Z, I've got all of these commitments and responsibilities. They are thoughts, which may be summaries of the situation that we find ourselves in, but that is not necessarily who we are. And what I was very happy with in terms of my own performance, I suppose, was I was able to use my creativity in the field to produce images that either externalized that trauma so I could kind of get it out of myself, or make images that were light and airy and atmospheric. Now, it's not just in the field that you can do this. You can do this in front of the computer too. So if I come back into my Lightroom catalog, I can see a whole bunch of different photographs, so maybe something like this. And I could sit with this image and express myself with it in a way. But when I sat down to make this video, the one that actually spoke to me the most was this image here. So if I look at this raw file, and the shooting stats were very, very simple. It was 1/30th of a second at f5.6 at ISO 1250 at 200mm on the GFX. I did use a circular polarizer. I used my case circular polarizer. I tend to keep it on my camera most of the time and roll on or off the amount of polarization that I need. But this was definitely a case circular polarizer was used here. So if this is the full frame, so if I look at the full frame original, we can see there's a whole bunch of content there. Now, I created a square in the field because squares are calming. There's no two ways about it. You put something in a square and it's going to make you feel more calm. The original 4:3 aspect ratio here is including quite a lot of this background stuff that isn't terribly blurry. It was quite close to these leaves. So what I've decided is I want to kind of emphasize the feeling of elevating. So feeling up. Okay, so if we want to feel up, then instead of a horizontal aspect ratio, we can go to a vertical aspect ratio. And I'm just going to tidy this up a little to get the content the way I want it to be. So bear with me. I tend to look, you can see here these little bright patches on the edge of the frame there. I could go in and clone those out or whatever, but I'm just wanting to see if I can sort of summarize this image just here in Lightroom without having to go into Photoshop. So there we have this 4:5 vertical aspect ratio. To use the old expression, why shoot 4:5? It looks more expensive. And for this particular image, I think it gives me enough of the stuff I want to see, and it's eliminated a lot of the distractions. If we think about our mental health, eliminating distractions, eliminating things that are antagonizing us, if we have the ability to do so, is a really good way to simplify our lives. And therefore, the marriage between art and craft, the marriage between expression and mental health is the same. Remove distractions, remove clutter, remove things that are antagonizing your aesthetic pleasure of this photograph. That is the same way. If you do it in your photography, it will happen in your brain as well. Now, There is a certain amount of separation between the foreground leaves and the background blurring. However, I probably would like it to be a bit more that way. So what I'm going to do is just very, very simply, I'm just going to create a mask for the background. Now, it has included quite a lot of these leaves up here, but I do think that these leaves at the bottom are the core. These are the important ones. So what I'm going to do, right, I can create a separation by, I could cool the background, and that is going to make the foreground leaves pop out somewhat. I don't want it too cool, so I maybe wouldn't want to overly saturate it. And I can keep the warmer tones by just keeping the magenta on the positive side. And you don't have to separate it much. I don't have to cool it down much to create that separation. What else can I do? Well, I could come in here and do that negative dehaze. Now, I don't want to go too far because otherwise it's going to look a bit ridiculous. But a little bit of negative dehaze is going to create atmosphere. Atmosphere is absolutely synonymous with feeling relaxed, feeling joyful, feeling calm. So I want to produce an image that is calming, but at the same time is working as an aesthetic as well. I'm going to go back into the color here, and once I've done that atmosphere shift, I can actually use the atmosphere as the separator instead of the cool tones. If we use cool tones, we're introducing more of a melancholic feel. It's just a fact of life. If I go too blue, it's going to look a bit weird, but I do like it. Okay, this is the thing about processing on the fly, is I can change my mind. If we make it warm and rich, the whole image is just going to feel uplifting. If we introduce some cooler tones, we are going to definitely introduce that slightly more negative side. It's the yin and the yang, I suppose, is the warmth of the leaves in the foreground juxtaposing with the cooler leaves in the background. So I think I will go with it that way. And I'm just going to go into the point color, and I just want to pull the saturation down on those tones that are just a bit blue. And I'll create another one here and just boost the saturation of the slightly warmer tones. So I'm trying to be a little bit light-handed with this, certainly, to produce a background that I'm happy with. Still not 100% convinced I'm there. Maybe a bit darker. Back into darkness. So there we have, I'm happy with the kind of separation between those rich, joyful foreground leaves and the slightly more subdued background. You'll notice I haven't made a single global adjustment yet. I like to sort out, or quite often like to sort out local adjustments before I come in and start making the global adjustments. I'm trying to understand the separation between the subject and the background, for want of a better term. Now, how dark this goes is definitely going to change how it feels. I want the contrast to be there. I want these leaves to really sing out of the screen there. And I feel the luminosity here, I feel quite happy with. Now, if I wasn't talking to the camera, I would be quite happily losing myself in this creative experience. And that is another great way to ease your mental health, to feel as if you can express yourself through your photography, to feel comfortable that you can make these connections in your mind between the positive and the negative. We tend to worry a lot about, in our photography, about what will other people think? What would Adam Gibbs do, or X photographer who you love their work? What would they do? And I think part of the creative process for me is to not care. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. It's just I want to create images for me in a style that pleases me and allows me to join all these dots between my mental health and my expressive output. I can be in the field experiencing all of these feelings consciously or subconsciously and make images that either express the joy that I feel or sometimes the more of the anxiety that I feel. So this is an image that is very simple. It may not be to everyone's taste. If I processed it again, it might be different, but that's not the point. I've actually enjoyed fiddling around with this, and I can come in and make a few little tweaky changes, but it's a game of millimeters with those sliders. I'll spend a bit more time on this image once I've finished recording, and I'll put it up on the screen now for you to see. I'll include the original unworked version, and you'll see quite dramatically that the original is more homogeneous. Tonally, it's more homogeneous, it's more samey. And the worked file, there's clearly more of a transition between the foreground leaves and the background. I think that sort of introducing transitions is a really, really good way of making photographs stand out a little bit more. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. I look forward to a couple of weeks' time sharing this overnight shoot that we've got planned, if the weather cooperates out here. Check out of Darkness, it's still available. Very proud of that. And there are a few spots available on some workshops in the early part of 2025. Plus, we have one cancellation for Scotland here in November. So if you want to go to this area and the Outer Hebrides and experience the beauty of the Scottish landscape with me in November, there is one spot available. Thank you very much for watching. As always, dive into the comments, give us a thumbs up, all of that stuff. And I look forward to sharing our local landscape with you very, very soon. Bye for now.